Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Shiva, Mau, Gerardo, Antonio, to this panel. It's a pleasure to have you here, and bienvenidas and bienvenidos to all the audience. So, Mau, thank you for joining us today. You have the floor.
Well, thank you, Fauri. Super excited about today's conversation. I mean, it's one of the big things. It's the 10th talk that we have between HSBC and Metabase Q. We're excited for all of you that are joining, and there's not a better occasion than to hear from this amazing panel of three people, great experts, that it's not a theory thing, but they're actually on the ground looking at these things, how identities get stolen in different ways, and it's super exciting. So welcome, everyone. Just looking forward to this conversation with this amazing lineup of speakers. And Tonio, the floor is yours. Shiva, thank you for participating. Gerardo as well. So looking forward for the conversation.
How are you guys? Yeah, really excited about this one. I think there's not much knowledge, particularly in Latin America, about these topics we're gonna be discussing, and I think we have great experts on the panel tonight. I mean today, and it's gonna be great learning from them because, as Mauricio said, we're trying to watch operations on what is happening right now on our security perspective. So first off, we're gonna start with business email compromise. I think people, when they hear business email compromise, they probably think about getting hacked, like their internal emails. And to some extent, that might be it. But can we share a better description, Gerardo, of why business email compromise is a serious thing and how that involves fraud most of the time, and how these criminals are using it for some purposes, not just to read what you write to your wife?
Of course, Antonio. So, well, as you mentioned, business email compromise is a huge problem globally. I will start with a quick concept of it's basically fraudsters use research and social engineering to impersonate senior managers normally or vendors. I will talk about the main type of business email compromise to convince victims to make payments. And only in the last 2 years, FBI reported that globally there were $3 billion of losses because this type of attacks. In 2020, FBI received more than 19,000 of complaints because of this. And in LATAM in particular, we are seeing in this year in 2021, overall an increase of cyber fraud attacks, but like around 24%. In particular, in Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, we have been seeing an increase of business email compromise attacks because in LATAM normally didn't hear this type of attacks to be actually materialized. But now we are seeing more and more of these type of cases. And Mexico also start to see some of them. So it's important to share this to everyone to be able to protect of this type of attacks. So the main type of business email compromise that exists currently, the first one is about CEO, that basically fraudsters impersonate senior manager, maybe by email, by phone, could be different type of ways. Normally impersonate the CEO or the CFO and convince the victim to direct payments to a fraudster control account. So they receive the money. And when they notice this, is maybe sometimes too late to be able to recover the money. Other type is invoice. So basically fraudster impersonate a known vendor, a company. So at the same way, so they impersonate by email or by phone and to redirect the payment to on another account that is owned by the fraudster. Also, the other type of business email compromises where they impersonate police or bank, or they pretending to be of the police or the bank too. So they request to the victim to make payments. The reasons can be different: to protect, to another front, to assist, to an investigation, but at least they convince them to make this type of payments. And the other one is they pretend to be another organization or known by the victims. So it could be a telecom service, a provider, government authority. So they impersonate these, and again, they give the different reasons to convince the victims to make this type of frauds. Maybe, well, Siva can be shared some type of these type of attacks, but basically these are the main types of attacks that we are seeing. Again, we are seeing more and more. We're normally one big case can be more than $2 million. We receive these accounts, they move very fast the amount, different accounts, cheques. So fraudsters take advantage of these because the victim made the payment. So it's not that someone impersonate or account take over the account. So that's the main concern in this type of attacks, Tonio.
Okay, so when we were talking before preparing this for this call, we were talking about how just Mexico, I guess we are not so trusty of this kind of fraud, of line of fraud. But I think that in itself is a risk, because
Correct.
maybe we don't take it as much into account because we think we're protected because hey, he won't make the payment, right? But I guess when adversaries are getting better, now we read somewhere that they're reconstructing the voice of their bosses, so the attacks are super convincing, and it's getting super hard to or the assailants are getting better, I guess, at their crime. So Siva or Chiva, why don't you talk to us why this is particularly difficult to detect, and what can we do about it, especially before it gets to be a big problem in Mexico, but then it is a big problem somewhere else. So.
Globally, this is a huge problem. There's billions of dollars worth of fraud happening every year. Some countries actually use this as an income stream. Like some sanctioned countries use this as an income stream. For dollars. So that is it's big business, right? So the why is it challenging to identify and pick up and stop? The fact is the customer is, like in our case, the banking channel, for the banking channels, the customer is the one making the payment. So for example, Antonio is our customer. So Antonio logs in, Antonio makes a payment. And if I stop the payment and then call him to verify, hey, Antonio, did you make this payment? Are you okay with this payment? They sometimes actually tell us, yeah, it's valid payment. And in a lot of cases, if they don't even know that this is an attack and they are sending it to a fraudster, they are just going to assume that they are making a payment to a valid supplier and or a valid entity, and then are just going to tell us, hey, yeah, that is a correct payment, I just made the payment. And because they just made the payment, in their mind it is a correct payment. So sometimes actually we run into a situation where like they think that we are questioning their business. So when Antonio makes a payment for, let's say, $1 million to some vendor, or things vendor, when we call them and say, hey, did you make a payment to this vendor? They said, I just made a payment. Why are you asking me this question? So there is actually resistance, like for us. So for us, like from our point of view, it's the customer logging on. So there is no indicator that, like there's a potential issue. Customer using their proper credentials, customers making the payment. The attack has already happened outside. So like, Gerardo mentioned a few types of, fraud, and, like it is not like somebody is calling you and say, hey, I'm a fraudster, make a payment to me, right? Or, randomly calls you and says, hey, can you make a payment? They are extremely good. What they do is, they actually research you quite a bit first before they actually attack you. There are a few people that will just randomly try, like spray and pray, right? Like, so they'll try and, see if somebody is falling victim. But a lot of these attacks, like I said, they're big business. A lot of these attacks are organized crime, and they will research you, and then they will identify who your suppliers are, and then impersonate your supplier and say, hey, you know what, my bank account number has changed. Can you please, going forward, all payments make to this account number. We have changed the bank, or they'll create another bank. The name will be the same. And for banking transactions, name is not used in most cases, like actually, like in all cases. So, it's the account number, sort code, and all those other details that are used. So what ends up happening is account number is changed. The name is still the same. So when you make the payment, like you are actually paying the fraudster. And when will you find this out? You will only find this out after the actual supplier calls you and says, hey, where is my payment? After 30 days or, whatever your agreement is with net 30, 45, 60, whatever it is, they'll call you after that time and say, hey, where is my payment? And you say, I've already made the payment. And then you start digging around, and then you find after 30 days, 40 days, like that the payment has gone to a fraudster. And by then these guys, nowadays you have instant payments, like, the moment you make the payment, the other side is actually receiving the money. So they are already out with the money right away. So you can't even go and recall the funds or, recover the funds. It's already gone. They just close the account, walk away, or, abandon the account and walk away, once they take the money out. So it's extremely fast. It's extremely well researched. And it's, the customer on our channels, like it's the customer for the banks, it's the customer making the payment. So it's very difficult to identify that this is fraud. There are a few things that you can do, but those are all hit and misses, like, so this is why, like we talk about, like customers actually are organizations having strong processes to ensure that, like they don't fall victim. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think you touch a really interesting topic, because on the security practice, we often talk about dwell time, the time between the attack and when you respond, right? And I think this is the poster child of one attack that you might not be wiser until you receive maybe the correspondence from the bank telling you that you're short something, or as you said, that's a good example. The guy that wanted the payment, or the
original
I
supplier.
guess that your supplier is gonna ask, hey, where's my payment? But he might be even like, hey, it's coming. So it's a lot of dwell time to things that happen super fast, because that money is out of there super fast.
And Antonio, something important is that normally we see that the fraudsters' accounts are normally in different countries. So sometimes the transaction is the payment is made in Mexico, but the owner of the account is in Hong Kong. So also the different time zones is complicate more this type to prevent this type of attacks, because at the time that they notice and when the supplier say I didn't receive my payment, the money is already gone out, right? So this is important to note. And obviously between banks we have communication, but doesn't matter if when the victim.
When the other bank is off hours, right? So one of the banks is off hours, you're not going to get anybody from there like to respond immediately. So like that is what they use. So usually previously it used to be the weekends, right? So on a Friday evening they'll hit, so that they'll have a Saturday and a Sunday or a Monday, like if it's a long weekend, increase their dwell time on the in a bank, so when they actually physically hit a bank. But now it's like all digital. So, like they look at, like time zones. So, like when they hit, they send to a time zone where, like they know by the time you identify it, they are already gone. So you won't be able to, act immediately. Even if you identified the problem, you can't act because the other bank is actually, or other end is actually sleeping. So
maybe, they look for holidays, right? To hit or before a holiday, and maybe on the receiving country, not your country. So that brings us to, that makes it super hard, right? Because we don't control the second part. We might know the calendar here and say, hey, payment guys, holiday is coming, take care, but we don't know, we can't keep track of the whole world for payment, right? Or police it. So what do we do? What can we do on controls? I want to separate it on what can people do, like businesses, what can they do on a certain, and then as a bank or as a financial institution, what can you do? Which I think it's harder, but you have more tools, right? So
so there are actually two different
so
there are actually two different areas. So it's not just the customer or consumer and the bank. It is also controls are also technical and process oriented. So some of the technical controls will be like, make sure that your email is secure. So that nobody can actually hack into your email and then send you, like a false instruction, right, or a unauthorized instruction. So that is one thing. So we are not going to talk about the technical aspect of it in this discussion. We are going to talk more about processes. So a few things that you can basically do, any company can do, is to ensure you have a process in terms of verification. So for example, when somebody changes their bank account details, have a process to offline verify, through a call with a known number that is belonging to that supplier. Make sure that you have a verification process for bank account changes or any contact account changes even, so they may actually even do it this way. They will change the contact information first, and then they will do the banking information second, so that when you contact them, you are calling the fraudster on the new contact, not on the old, known contact. So you want to have a process whenever there is a contact change or any change with the supplier or any details of the supplier or anybody who you make payments to, make sure that you have a process for verification. That itself is going to be a significant control. Second, the people that create the payments, if they have done it for long enough, they have an instinct, they develop an instinct for, like something that is off. Respect that, like empower employees to actually question payments that they think are like, doubtful. Because a lot of times when we when there is fraud, when we talk to them, like customers, they tell us, hey, like this did seem a little shady, but we still, we didn't think much of it. We went through with it, and then, we didn't think much of it until later when we found the issue. Somebody already had an instinct that something is wrong with this. Use that instinct, like question that. Even if HSBC calls you as, like to tell you report about fraud, if you have a question about it, call the, your relationship manager, client service manager, whoever, like just to verify, like, so if there is something, seems off, it is probably, especially in terms of money, go ahead and, like act on that instinct. So those are two major things that you can do. And Gerardo, like if you have anything else, I'll let you add as well.
Yeah, well, something I will say that basic checks that we can do is this type of attacks will receive sometimes emails. So and you mean the emails we have a domain, so HSBC period.com, right? So this type of checks sometimes they move or add another letter. So that type of checks also are like common sense to see, well, if that's not normal, well, that's not the correct email address, right? So that's also a quick thing that we can see, well, this is not a normal type of requirement, and this is not the email address. Other type of thing is, as Eva saying, common sense. When we receive a call and saying you need to change that, make the payment to this account, and we never do these payments to this account for that particular vendor, and there is a full process to do those checks. So it's also complementing what Siva mentioned. So to ask the questions, is real the real account? Is this a real requirement? It's better to double check and make a call to the correct to the vendor, or if we receive a call or an email from the CEO when the CEO never called us to request a payment. So that type of things is like, well, that's not normal, right? So I think we need to do a double check. And as Eva mentioned, in terms of process, when we have a process and suddenly someone requests a change of an account to make the payment, so it's better to do a double check with the vendor. So is that the correct account? Yes or no, right? That is something that as a quick process we can do. Maybe in time is not the best, right? But at the end, we are seeing this type of increase of attacks. It's better to have these controls, and it's a quick call, or we already have the contacts, right?
Yeah, you may not actually want to do it for every payment because that might be a
Mm.
lot of
Risk
work.
approach.
Yeah, risk approach. So, like you look at if a payment is beyond a certain value, like let's say, like 100,000, again, the risk appetite is completely up to individual organizations. But let's say some smaller business may say, anything over 50,000 is big for me. But a very large corporate may say, $1 million is big for me. So beyond the threshold, I check, so, or if there is a cross-border payment, I check, if it is within the domestic, if it's a domestic payment, you may not want to have it. You can think of these things. So, you can optimize, your, risk management, to identify where the, potential issues are and then address that instead of actually just adding more and more work to everybody. You can streamline it a little bit is basically where I'm going with that.
So this one, oh, sorry, Gerardo.
Sorry,
go ahead.
No, the only thing that I will add is awareness campaigns. So between the companies, so to say, remember to do these checks, to double check this type of message that we just mentioned, but something like is clear for us in an easy access to remind that we need to know this type of attacks. So that's also a key thing that we can do. So
yeah, I was going there to say that. I think this one is one that really benefits from awareness campaigns. Also, right now, when you're calm, everything is normal, talk to your guys, tell them, hey, I will never ask you for payment, because as we see on the fraud side, it's often distressed, right? It's like the boss asking, hey, why didn't you pay something to prompt the employee to act, right? And don't think. So while he's scared because he's getting in his mind, right? Someone is yelling at him. He's distracted and he goes through the process without checking, right? So
yeah.
Talk calmly right now in your awareness program that we will never ask of you, I guess phone companies or banks say, we will never ask for you this and this and this. This is not normal. We will never go through that. So if you have a payment, check, go through the channels. And I like to see it like push-pull, right? You don't go through processes when someone pushes. You go through process when you start the process, not when someone sends you something, you don't click on it, right? It's okay, if you want to contact the bank, go through the proper channels that you already have, follow through your process. And even if someone sends you something offline of the normal or email, you start the process like you always do, right? You look for the bank, you look for the, I don't know, service provider or those guys, right? I guess that could cover, because I know your life is not simple on this one, because as we said, it looks normal, right? From the other end, it's really hard to catch. Okay, let's move on, guys, because this other topic we have is really dear to me in some odd way, because I've dealt with identities a lot, and I talk about identities a lot here in Mexico. So we want to talk about identity theft. Mexico and some countries, we don't have strong IDs, right? We have an ID based on a political system, which has really some odd rules that doesn't have is not open to the public. It's open to political parties, and it's kind of a weird way to build identity. So that leads to some other stuff. But then there's a need for identity. And since for financial institutions, for everything that contracts, law, whatever, you want to sell your car, you need identity to see who you're sending money to, right? Even as we said, like paying someone. So can we talk more about identity theft? And some of us, I think, we think we're okay, that Mexico is okay, that identity theft is not as rampant as we hear in other countries, but I know you know otherwise, right? So can we talk about it, Gerardo, please, on your experience here, and then see if you can tell us about your global or more global experience.
Sure, Antonio. Well, the first thing in Mexico, we are seeing a lot of attacks in terms of, I will say, account takeover, identity theft in the digital environment. To give some stats, in Mexico, in February of this year, there was registered like around 50 million of attacks of this in this type of frauds. Only in the first 8 months of this year represent the same total of attacks on the 2020. So overall, Mexico, we are seeing a lot of attacks in terms of social engineering, malware. So I will give a more detail about this type of attacks. But basically, we are seeing a lot of attacks in Mexico. In terms of amounts, well, it is different, like business email compromise, but also there are millions of losses because, again, what the fraudsters are doing is taking over about the account of the customers and making the payments. So again, this and again, the money is moving very fast. So sometimes we don't have enough time to protect or recover the amounts. So to give some definitions or concepts about account takeover, social engineering is basically fraudsters social engineering information from a customer, so they can convince them to give some credentials, and they took remote control of their account. Could be on the internet banking or mobile banking, and they log and then do the payments. They normally need to obviously first register a new account, and then they start to do the payments. But they obtain the credentials through social engineering attacks. Other ways by malware. Fraudsters install malicious softwares in the computers or in the devices, and they take over once maybe they log on. They see maybe on a screen, some screen is pop up, and then the customer then click, and then the fraudster take over the account, and they start to do the payments with the credentials again from the customer. Other type of attacks is credential stuffing, where fraudsters use automated process to gain access to the customer accounts, so via online banking or mobile app. So they check stolen credentials maybe from some other sites, and they try to use that information to start to access. But all these processes are automated. Go ahead, Siva.
Yeah, just to add to the credential stuffing, right? So the bank so for example, LinkedIn had a huge breach a few years ago, where LinkedIn accounts were stolen. Right. So what they do is so LinkedIn basically immediately suspends all those accounts and everything else. So you can't use it against LinkedIn. What they do is people generally use the same user ID password, or even the same password multiple places, even if the user ID is different. So what they do is the attackers, they take those, user ID passwords, and then they try against different sites. For example, HSBC Bank, like some other bank, or some other email service. They try the same user ID password against multiple services. And if anything works, then now they are into that system as one of these persons, and that is basically credential stuffing. So basically what you do is you take credentials that you have stolen from some other website that was compromised, and then use that to victimize the person as well as the other organization. So, the second organization was never breached, right? The first organization lost the data, but that data is being now used to actually break into the second organization. So, that is credential stuffing, and they try quite a few, user ID password combinations, and once they get into it, now they are the person. And they can now change passwords. They can change account information. They can make payments. They can change, all whatever that user is entitled to, they can do. So that is a significant, issue, that has actually been going, because more and more websites are getting hit and getting compromised, and then that leads to other attacks against other, applications as well.
I just want to go a little back and describe the identity theft attacks and to probably make it more clear why this is so devastating. I think an identity theft attack could be devastating for a person, right? Or for a business. People go take your accounts and maybe take a home loan or take some credits and take away millions, which you are liable now for, right? So yeah, there's some ways where you can clarify that with the bank, but it will take a lot, right? And I want to talk with you about that. Like, it takes a lot to prove that it wasn't you because it looks real again, right? Maybe don't some indicators, but we need to go about and try to do forensics and see if there was a connection from different.
So it's
you
very
need to prove
similar
it,
to
right?
this, right? So it's like if I give my house key to you, and then you use the key to open the house, right? The door, right? Is it you or me? You know, like it's whoever has got the key is opening the door, and they're authorized to open the door. So if somebody is using your credentials to log on, that's why one of the things that we keep talking about, and we'll talk about that later as well, is that never share passwords, never share credentials, not even within your own organization. Never ever share log on credentials with anybody.
And between accounts, right?
Between accounts as well, but even more with like other people, but also don't use the same passwords for multiple services, especially the critical services, because then once one is compromised, everything else is compromised as well. I'll pass back on to you.
No worries. Yeah, I think this is one of the, of course, it has a high yield for the attacker, so they invest a lot on this. So they will be preying on you, and they will be checking your lower level accounts. Let's say, like you didn't remember you had a Yahoo account, right? So they will try and prey on that, and then send from that Yahoo account emails to other organizations to try to let's say, like we see like lateral movement on hacks. We see this like with identity, right? So they try to social engineer their way into your life, and then at some point take away your life. I'll take your analogy on opening the door, but then they change the lock.
Yes.
And you're screaming on like, hey, this is my house. Yeah, well, guess what? You don't have the key, so people won't believe you that you're not the owner, right?
Especially with social engineering, like, so the customers actually provide the, because so one of the examples that we see, like constantly is, the fraudster will call the customer as though they are HSBC fraud team. So they'll say, hey, you know what, I'm from the HSBC fraud team or whichever bank fraud team. There are some fraudulent payments, looks like suspicious payments there. So they'll just make up some number. Did you make a payment for $5,000 to Antonio? You are going to say, no, I don't know Antonio, like I'm not going to make payments to him. Why did I make payments? Then they'll say, okay, did you make payment, like $3,000 payment to Siva? No, I did not make it. Oh, I see those two payments here, so I need to cancel it. Give me your OTP codes. So now the customer has, given them the OTP codes. Now what happens is the fraudster then goes in to their account using the OTP codes. Now that they are in, they can now actually read out. Okay, then they'll say, let's say you made a payment to XYZ company for $10,000. So they'll say, okay, did you make a payment to XYZ company for $10,000? You say yes. Yes, you did make the payment. So you say yes. Now trust has been established. Now they have identified. They have told you that some things are wrong, which is completely made up. Then they have verified or established trust by actually pointing out, reading out something, because you gave them access, reading out something that is true. And now, you believe them. And then they will start saying, okay, fine, I see these payments. I need to cancel those payments. Give me more OTP codes. Then they use that OTP codes to, instead of canceling those payments, which don't exist, they'll create new payments. And then they will tell you usually, hey, wait for 45 minutes. I've reset your account. It'll take 45 minutes or 1 hour to come back up. So wait for 1 hour. And then while you're waiting, they are taking the money out from the other bank. And then
they tell you here to uninstall the app.
Yeah.
Or maybe they ask for the OTP code, so they install their own token service or their own bank app while they take over everything, right? So imagine you're in the other end. Well, you're out of luck, because even
And something that we're seeing more in Mexico, Antonio Siva, is the malware attacks. So the fraudsters sending emails. Maybe they try to say again, it's like it's an email from, in theory, for your bank, and say click this link to update your version of the internet banking. So you click there, that link, and if you don't have the enough protection to don't download different softwares, then you will have the malware. And then when you access to the internet banking, the fraudster will be able to learn or copy the information that you are using to the credentials to access to the internet banking, or suddenly you see a pop-up and you need to click the OTP to complete a payment. So then they now you are doing also the transaction. And as Eva say, in the other type of fraud is the customer who is doing the transaction, the payment. So it's also hard to prove that it's a fraudster, right? That is a common thing that we see in small companies in particular, but that's something that we see a lot here in Mexico.
So the BEC is not as much in Mexico yet, or in Latin America as much as yet, but account takeover and identity theft is actually in the top 5. Has been in the top 5 for a while, and malware, as Gerardo said, has actually been in the top 2 for the last 4 or 5 years that I've been monitoring this, as part of the, the cybersecurity for channels. So that is a big current issue. So one of the things, you probably want to look at is making sure that, your networks are clean. So you have proper anti-malware solutions in place. You have a policy within your organization to make sure that people don't download stuff randomly from the internet, because that is how malware gets into your organization in the first place. You click on links, you download something, like a software. One of the things that we see in certain countries is they install pirated software a lot. And pirated software typically come with malware. That is why, that is one of the very popular ways of actually distributing, malware. So these are all things that, you want to be very careful about. Have a, internal, anti-malware checks, have somebody come and run scans across all your network, not just the banking application PCs or whatever, right? Across your network, secure your network, right? Don't let, even if there's now 0-day vulnerability, there are so many. You want to identify as many as you can, patch your systems. Have your IT teams patch your systems constantly. They have to be on top of this all the time. Make sure that you have use VPN to log in to your organization. So you don't let anybody log in with just a remote desktop. You have to have VPNs, like firewalls, and those are all basic security 101. Have that in place first, basic stuff. And those are things that that will contribute a lot towards you not being a victim.
And the same for devices. So that's obviously in the PCs and the software, but the same on the devices and protections, as Eva mentioned. That's important because we use the devices to also do transactions, right? So it's important to have the same protection in the devices, anti-malwares, so we don't download any malicious code. That's important to add on that.
Also, public Wi-Fi. So if you're on a mobile device, right? So if you go to a coffee shop, or if you go to some any location, right? So if you're using public Wi-Fi, those are all notoriously insecure. So you want to, and other fraudsters can actually mimic let's say you go to a Starbucks or some other location, right? They can mimic a Starbucks location on the Wi-Fi access point. So you may be connecting directly to the fraudster's access point instead of your Starbucks or whichever company or the Wi-Fi you're intending to log into. So and they capture all the information. So those are all things that you want to be careful about.
I see people telling us here use common sense. I agree to extent, but common sense depends on awareness and education, right? So if we don't do our proper job of educating people, common sense is something big and ethereal, right? So I don't think, because as you said, we are in top 5s. I think people are overconfident in the way they detect stuff. I have a really clear image in my mind of someone saying, hey, but when they called me, they had the same recording as a bank. And I'm like, dude, it's 2021. you know of cell phones, you know of things like recording. We did that in the 80s with cassettes. Like anyone can do it, and your authentication of the process is they have a recording of the bank.
Also,
I mean,
caller
that's
ID.
super crappy,
The caller
right?
ID.
Like it's your yeah.
Yeah, so the customers have told us, oh, you know, the call came from a HSBC number. So anybody, I can sit at home, you know, like somewhere, you know, like in some other country, and then, you know, like change the caller ID number to whatever I want. You know, there is software to do that right now. So yeah, you can't depend on that.
And for free, there are softwares in the Android and the apps and the stores, so you can download to do that. So that's something important.
One which is a big one in Mexico is SMS messages. People think since they come with a 5-digit code, they're legit. Or since that SMS is coming from a number that they get a lot of messages from maybe other transactions that are legit, that the message is legit. And the message is not legit because it comes from some number. The message is or isn't legit for other attributes that it has, right? So I think people are overconfident on, and they think that they have it all of this sorted out. But as Shiva said on that Starbucks account, you go somewhere and you connect to a free Wi-Fi. First off, that might not be your service provider page. It's trivial to build a Wi-Fi rogue access point. It's trivial. I could do it on my computer in minutes. Also, hey, they had the whole page when I authenticated, right? It's trivial to do. Like there's software to capture the whole page and just mount it on the other. I don't have to do any coding. I'm not copying anything. I'm not building the page. I'm just pointing something and saying, hey, bring me that page. And that will bring Facebook, that will bring Instagram, but that will also bring your bank's page, at least to an extent that you'll think it's legit. So common sense goes so far. There's a lot of stuff going around. So I often, to oversimplify it, go back to my push-pull approach. Someone is calling you, telling you it's fraud, hang up, call your bank. You know the number on the back is on the credit card. Don't call back on the phone, because that will reroute you to the guy that called you, and that might be a fraud. Push-pull, you initiate the process with your proper contacts and with your proper connections. Don't rely on something, don't click on stuff. Just start the process yourself if you're in doubt, right? I got this from a store. I bought something online on a big department store. It was an appliance, a big appliance, right? And I automatically received that call from Risk, right? And I'm like, okay, tell me all about it, right? What's the risk? Hey, it's so and so. They had my some information, right? So I started prodding, and of course, it wasn't. It was a fraud with the guys on the department store trying to ping back the guys that made legitimate purchases. So they were like just waiting for their appliances. So their guard was down, right? That looks like a real one, right? But then you start asking questions. You can, hey, if you are who you say you are, you should have all of this information. Why are you asking me to give you the information?
Yeah.
So just hang up.
And red flags.
If you have doubt, just call back.
Yeah,
So,
and those
sorry,
red flags.
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt, Antonio. So, and the red flags is when someone is to start to ask your password to your username, OTP codes. So that's something a red flag, because the banks never ask that type of information to help you to make to block a type of a payment. So that type of things is, if you start to ask those type of questions or information, hang up and call directly to the bank to say this is a correct call or not, because as Eva mentioned, the caller ID is not very because fraudsters are very good to copy the scripts that maybe the banks use to when they call in terms of a fraud. So that is very important. It's better to call directly to the bank and then to confirm that, because again, banks don't ask that type of information.
Yeah. Just to add, from a banking perspective, right? So, like if your channel, your banking portal allows IP whitelisting, like enable IP whitelisting. What does IP whitelisting do? If you, let's say your IP address is, and I use a private IP address right now, so 10.10.10.15, right? So if you have credentials, let's say username is, Siva, password is 12345, right? Obviously you shouldn't be ever using that kind of password, but like I'm just using it as an example. So let's say I give Antonio and I whitelisted this 10.10.10.15 because that is my IP address. So Antonio comes in and says, okay, you know what? He got my the user ID and password somehow. So he's going to try and log in to my banking portal using Siva and 12345. He will not be able to log in because he's not coming from the same IP address. He doesn't have the same IP address as me. So I can give ranges. I can give, you don't have to have single IP addresses. You can actually give ranges and stuff. Some banking applications allow you to do that, which ours does as well. So enable that. So even if they get the credentials, they cannot log on. Because they are not, the other piece of information that is required is the IP address, and they don't have that IP address because they are not logging into your network. They're logging in directly to the banking application. So there are things that you can do beyond that. Talk to your bank, not just the bank, any service provider, but typically, because that's where money primarily, transacts, talk to your bank to see what security features their banking portal has, so that and you can find out what is most optimal for you, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Sometimes it may not work for you. If you're traveling a lot, having an IP whitelisting is not going to work because your IP address keeps changing every time you go to a new location. Unless you VPN in, so you can have a single location, you VPN into that location and then come from there every time, wherever you are, then that works. But if you're just directly logging into your banking portal from wherever you are, then it's not going to work. So there are pluses and minuses. So you need to have a conversation with your banking professional to see what are the features available, so that you can actually pick the ones that actually work for you better, and ask them for advice as well. What do you think we should be doing? Usually, like with us, like our fraud teams, we help our customers, to say, hey, these are things, we look at your history, this is what is a good configuration for you. So we actually help them out with that as well. So my team actually does that as well. So have conversations. And also the other thing, for both these type of attacks that we talked about, know who to call if you become a victim. That is the biggest thing. Don't assume that you will never get hit. You will get hit at some point. Okay, so don't be waiting to prepare a plan when you get attacked, or after you get attacked. Have a plan ready before incident response planning, right? So have a plan ready before an attack happens, so that you know who to call, when, what to do. Practice it, internally, with simulate an attack, simulate a BEC attack, simulate a account takeover attack. Who do you know? Do you know who in your bank to call to stop the money from leaving? Do you know who in your cybersecurity team to call? So those are things you need to plan ahead of time. Don't wait until the last talk I used the example of, when you are dying, you don't write your will. You write your will before.
Yes.
So you prepare yourself, right? You are not going to be concentrating on writing a will when you are having a heart attack. So have that plan ready. Make sure that you are ready with a clear plan, what to do, how, who to contact and stuff like that. That'll help a lot.
So before we go into Q&A mode, I wanted you to talk about data leakage. I think people just talking about how people are overconfident. I think at least here in Mexico, you get a call and they say, hey, I'm calling from bank X and your credit card. And we think we're super smart. So we say, hey, I don't even have a card with you. So we're giving data, right? Yep. We're telling them the next time use another bank. So in that big call center database, you just gave them one number. There's a lot of data mining going on. Like you see it in LinkedIn daily, right? Hey, if you have been working for I don't know, 1 to 5 years, press that, and then there's a lot of data and a lot of data mining, and I think we transmit a lot of information that could be used into or for attacking us, right? In all of different platforms. So can we talk about that? Because I think we all often think on attacks as being super negative, like that with fear or risk, so they get you on a stress. But can we talk about those soft attacks where
really,
we start giving data because we have it
really
and we think
quickly,
we're wise?
Yeah, really quickly, right? So you want to be aware of what you are communicating to others, right? It could be a social media post. You could basically publicize a new relationship you have with a new company, like a partnership that you have, set up. You're publicizing it. Now somebody is looking at your social media post and saying, hey, this guy, these two companies are related now. So that is information. So have a media policy, right? Make sure that you are vetting the information that you post on media. Even locations. I upload a picture with a location. So there were actually quite a few Facebook attacks using Facebook, where people were uploading pictures, and the fraudsters and the attackers, the burglars, basically physical burglars, they were looking at the pictures locations and saying, okay, this is where this picture was taken. They look at all your history, they know where you live now, and then because you are posting from some other location, like in some waterfall somewhere, they know that you're outside your house, you're not in your location. So they can go in now, to your location, your house, and then steal stuff from your house. So these are basic stuff, right? So when you post a picture, take out your location information, these are basic things that you can easily do. But again, there needs to be a conscious effort into it. We, like Antonio just mentioned, we leak data like anything. So the moment we open our mouths, we touch a keyboard, we do anything, we are leaking information. So we need to make sure that we are consciously understanding what we are leaking in terms of data, and then try to minimize that as much as possible.
And I would just because one of the questions is, how does the board prevent a CEO identity theft? That, I think that's a great example. If the CEO is traveling and he posts a picture that he's traveling abroad, now I can go on and send the accountant that email and tell him, hey, I'm on X. I need you to deposit to me this super quick because my credit card just got canceled or something, right? So we leak data and it leads to attacks, right? So I think we need to be like super smart on what and when do we communicate. It's not just sheltering yourself. So I'll go into that question right on. How does the board prevent CEO identity theft? What can we tell them?
Well,
Gerardo, please.
Go ahead.
Well, the first thing that the board can do, as I mentioned, the first thing is to make these campaigns of awareness. That's a key thing that the board can do. To be sure that they understand that the staff in general, so that they know that the CEO never will ask to change an account number to make a payment. So that's a thing that we can. That's a message that we can send across the companies to remind that. That's a key thing that the board can do. Other thing is to have a strategy in terms of awareness campaigns inside the company, to have a sending constant message to the staff. That's a key thing that the board can do. Other thing that can do is to receive emails from external domains. So I think that's a key thing that also can do, because there is a lot of emails that fraudsters send to try to convince the people to make this type of payments. Also the anti-malware, also because anti-malware, once they hack the emails, the real emails. So also having the protection in terms of security, information security on the systems, that's a key thing that the board need to have a strategy to ensure that they have in place. Go ahead, Sivaji, if you want to.
So wherever two-factor or multi-factor authentication is available, enable it. Okay, that is not 100% protection against all types of attacks, but it goes a long way in terms of, for example, one way it doesn't work. I'll tell you, I don't want to scare you guys, but I just tell you, SMS. We talked about SMS. A lot of two-factor authentication firms or solutions use SMS to send an OTP code to you. The problem with SMS is any application on the mobile device with the right permissions can actually read those SMS messages. So they already have that information, the fraudster, if they have the malware on your device, before you actually even read the message, right? So they can actually use that information and then take over the account quickly. So now, I'm like I said, if it is available, use it, because the attack complexity increases with more controls you put in place. So it's not everybody. So you look at it as a pyramid. At the bottom is the the easy kind of attacks, and the top is the more complicated attacks. As you go towards the top, the size is smaller, right? So the number of people that can launch the attacks reduces dramatically, right? So at the bottom, if you keep no controls, anybody can come in and like steal money from you. But as you go closer to the top, only the skilled people can come in and do it. But then the number of skilled people that can launch those attacks is dramatically low. So like any control that you can add. Two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, add if you have the ability to do it. It is not going to 100% prevent it, because I have seen attacks where the CEO, there was actually an attack in like in Vancouver here with an organization where the CEO got an email, a push notification or an email SMS saying, did you log on? He, without thinking, he just clicked yes. Okay, and that the fraudster was actually trying to log on. Yes, it is two-factor authentication, but did it serve the purpose? No, it did not. There are still weaknesses. However, if the control is there, implement it, or use it, enable it. So it will definitely go a long way towards, protecting, like think about it as a pyramid.
Yes.
The higher you go, the less number of chances that, like you're going to be a victim.
And
Yeah,
the
please.
callbacks.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry, Ricardo. Just
ahead.
to say that SMS is being deprecated for a long time for two-factor authentication. Be super wary of SMS. It is better than not having it, but be super wary of it, because anyone could take your phone number. Anyone can send it. It can be spoofed. That's why organization, I guess NIST special publication 63 tells you that please don't use SMS if you have another method, right? And then link methods, right? MFA methods, like if you're using your second factor is your email, also use a second factor for your email.
Yeah.
Right. That will go a long way, as Shiva said. That will really go a long way. Sorry, Ricardo, go ahead, man.
The only thing that I will add that we mentioned during the conversation is a callback or verification of account according risk-based approach. That's a key control that also can implement, as Eva mentioned, not for all because it's not functional, but at least to define a risk-based approach and confirm when someone is asking to change the account. That's a key control that also can be implemented.
Yes, and also just speaking about the common sense part, do your awareness, talk to your employees, don't leave these topics open. Talk about what to do, when to do it, talk about what is normal and what's not normal, and give them, I think Chiva said, empower them to call you and ask.
Yeah.
Right, and challenge you. Like this is a challenge like we do on computers, but don't rely on computers because we know they're not human, but allow those challenges to happen even on your process, right?
Yeah. Just to since we have a little time, so I just want to address
Yes.
the last question here as well, or one of the questions here as well, which is the BEC attack. Can it lead to a ransomware attack? So it depends. The answer is it depends. So it's like like when you have a fever, right? Do you have a flu or do you have COVID? We don't know. So what BEC attack, a successful BEC attack against a company indicates is that there is a weak process. Okay, that may be indicative of you may not have a patching process, proper patching process, proper something else. Your firewall may not be configured properly. So it is an indication. It is not directly leading to it is not going to directly lead to a like a ransomware attack. However, it depends on the BEC attack that we talk about. If the BEC attack happened because somebody was able to breach your email system and then get into your email system, it can lead to a ransomware attack because they are already in your network. They can just go from there to jump into a different database and then block the encrypt the database and then ask for ransom. So again, the answer is it depends, but usually like a successful attack on a fraud side usually indicates a weakness in process, which can lead to which can show that which can lead to other types of attacks as well. Yes, it can, but it may not always. That's the answer.
Yes, probably if they're taking the money from you straight from the account, they won't go.
They don't need. Yeah, they don't need to do ransomware.
To hack you, because that will take a lot. Also, we know that fraudsters are divided in specialties. So if these guys are social engineers, which most of these BEC guys are, They probably won't go into the penetration part.
Well,
as,
they may actually sell this information. They may actually sell this information to other people, who may then use that information. So they make money twice, one out of you, and then they sell your information to somebody else, and then those guys will come and hit you. So,
there's blood in the water.
Yeah,
there's blood in the water. They know you're weak on process, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So yes. Gerardo, just I think we're running out of time. So if you can tell us like just your general takeaway from the talk.
Yeah, I think the first thing is, and you mentioned that, Antonio, is again awareness for this type of attacks. That's a key thing that everyone can start to do. This is a big concern in globally. In Mexico, again, the account takeover and identity theft is already happening. In Mexico, business email compromise not yet, but we don't want to start to happen. So I think we have enough time to take the preventive actions that we just talked about. So that's important to start to work on that. We mentioned some controls, awareness, the multi-factor, the callbacks, again, anti-malware protection. So that's a key thing that we kind of start to work. I think that's my key message, Tony. We have enough time to be preventive on the business email compromise and to start to take more actions to prevent account takeover and identity theft.
Thanks, Gerardo. Shiva, your takeaway.
So again, I support everything Gerardo just mentioned. Like also, if you are a victim of a BEC attack or a BEC attack, call the bank first, because if the money is still in the bank and has not left it yet, we can stop the money from leaving your account. So call us first. So that's one thing that I forgot to mention earlier. So I wanted to mention that now, and all the other processes and everything else that, Gerardo just mentioned. So I think that'll be my, I'll just support that.
Yeah, have your plan so you can call fast.
Yeah.
Also have your process so you know fast that it was bad, right? About transaction and because of the dwell time, and call the bank. I think those three are great takeaways from that kind of attack. We have Carlos here. Carlos, welcome. I think we're closing. I think you're giving us your closing statements, right? For that.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for the fantastic input. I think given the relevance of this matter that is present, constant, and growing in all the ecosystems, today we had the opportunity to hear from you very objective and clear recommendations to be better protected. So thank you for that. And fortunately, time has run out of the scheduled timing. So from my side, thank you very much for your participation. We are heading now to the end of this fantastic program. Tomorrow will be our last session. So for our guests and attendants today, thank you very much for joining us. I invite you to join us tomorrow. With this, I will pass to Mauricio to do the final closing.
Well, I think a great conversation. Thank you to the three of you guys. It's interesting, and sometimes we think that we know, but the awareness piece is critical. So thank you for sharing what you see on a daily basis. It seems like it's an easy topic, but then they always caught you off guard, no? So I think the more people are aware of this, the better, and with live experiences. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, Carlos, as well for the support. As you mentioned, we're looking forward for tomorrow. Great panel also. So don't miss it. We're going to be talking about digital currencies, and it's just going to be our last conversation of the program. So we look seeing you, all of you, tomorrow, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.